Good morning and welcome. This is Ms.Beard doing the Russia PowerPoint for the Asian unit of Multicultural Foods at Pike High School. So our next unit that we're going to talk about is Asia, and one of the biggest country in Asia is Russia. Some of the things that you might notice on this slide, you can see the Russian dolls in the upper left-hand corner that fit into each other. You've probably seen those before. That is a Russian toy. And some of the beautiful architecture in some of Russia's cities like St. Petersburg and Moscow that we're going to discuss as well. Asia as a whole is the largest continent. It's home to over 3/5 of the entire world's population, and Russia itself is the biggest country in the world. It's about twice the size of the United States. Most people in Asia are crowded into small areas that support crop production. Not all of the land is useful, especially in Russia. Not all of it can be used to grow crops or for people to live because it extends so far north. And we're going to talk about the climate as well. Asia is home to some of the world's oldest cultures and traditions, which we're going to talk about with China and Japan. But right now they are also considered a technological leader in several areas and are definitely part of the major world political scene. All right, so just like I said, Russia is the largest country in the world. It's about twice the size of the United States. Its capital is Moscow, which can be found where the star is. And so it's pretty close to the Scandinavia area. Ukraine is right next door. And if you kind of have been paying attention to the news in 2014, Russia has invaded part of Ukraine and has claimed it as their own territory. And so there's some political drama going on in this area of the world that is concerning in several ways, and we'll talk about that as well. The Russian climate is known as being cold. They have very mild, short summers and long, cold winters. The Ural Mountains separate the European side of Russia from the Asian side to the east. There is a lot of rivers that provide transport for many different objects, but the climate is what you really need to remember. In Siberia, which is kind of the upper half of Russia, temperatures of up to negative 94 degrees have been recorded, which is just cold, cold, cold. And so not all the land in Russia is usable because of this. Some of it people just cannot live in because it is so cold. And so not all areas of Russia are highly populated. It just kind of depends on the temperature. You're going to find more people and cities in the southern part of Russia. Russia today is an independent country. It has a long history of being under, a monocratic rule, and recently, in the past 50 years, they were part of the Soviet Union or the USSR. That term means the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, which was a communist dictatorship. And if you remember, well, you wouldn't remember this, and neither would I, but in the 70s, 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, we were worried about communism as a country in the United States, and so we were always worried about what the Russians were doing. And there was always a threat that Russia was going to bomb or in some way hurt the United States. In 1991, the USSR was broken up into 15 countries, and Russia is now one of those countries. Right now, the Russian Prime Minister is Vladimir Putin, which you can see on the right side of the screen. He has been in power for several years, and in some ways, I would argue that he is kind of a dictator, despite the fact that they are no longer a communist nation. But that's just kind of my personal opinion there. You will see, as we talked about, politics in Russia are very different. This year, the Olympics were held in Russia in 2014, so you've kind of heard about Russia on the main stage more so because of their recent hosting of the Winter Olympics. Some history of Russia. Prior to the the communist ruled, the Romanov family ruled all of the Russian Empire for over 300 years. And the Romanovs were a very wealthy family. They were known as czars, which are kind of like kings. And if you've ever seen the movie Anastasia, you've actually seen this. Anastasia is a Disney movie that's based on the Romanov family, and Anastasia is the long-lost daughter of one of the Romanovs. And so just kind of a fun connection. I know as a Disney movie, you've probably seen it before. If you haven't, it's a fun movie to watch, and it kind of connects Russian history, and kind of it would help you better understand the Romanov family. All right, so Russia is a very connected nation today. Like I said, Asia is a technological leader. Over 99% of the Russian population has a mobile device, and they have one of the biggest online populations in Europe. And so they are definitely a country that has kept up and is up to date in terms of technology. Russian agriculture, because of their very cold climate, they have a very hearty cuisine. They eat a lot of foods that kind of stick to your bones and make you feel warm and cozy. Their major crops include wheat, cabbage, and potatoes, and you're going to see that reflected in their cuisine as well. Their holidays are mainly linked to the Orthodox Church, and so they are mostly a Christian nation, and so you're going to find Catholics and Protestants both. Mostly Protestants, I would say, overall, though, and so a lot of the different branches of Protestantism you're going to see in Russia. There's two major festivals that are marked with food, the New Year's and then the Festival of Winter, which is a 2-week-long festival. Breads and grains in Russia provide major calories. To kind of trace back their history as far as food goes, the first influences to Russian cuisine were the Slavs, bringing cream sauces and fish, and they are very close to Scandinavia, so you can kind of see how close, because it is so cold, it's important that they do eat hearty foods, and Russia is surrounded by water as well, so fish is a great source of protein. The next major influence was the Mongols, who brought new ways of cooking meat and how to make tea and yogurt and sauerkraut. Most of the Russian foods that we see today came from peasants, whose main foods included bread, kasha, and soups. Kasha is a fried or simmered grain, usually buckwheat, and it's definitely a staple in Russian cuisine today. Today, Russian foods are a combination of old peasant traditions and also European and Asian influences. Zuska are appetizers, and that could include smoked or pickled fish, sliced cold meats, breads of all different kinds, and, of course, caviar. Caviar, if you remember, are the processed and salted eggs of large fish. Most of the world's caviar is produced, or rather harvested, in the Dead Sea, which is very close to Russia. So caviar is a Russian appetizer staple. Some Russian soups include borscht, which is a beet soup. It's bright red, typically served with some sour cream on top. I remember in college, my roommate, she was actually from Poland, but she really loved borscht, and she would bring some home every time she would bring some back to college every time she went home. And I just thought it was the strangest thing because it's this bright red soup. I had never seen it before, but it's actually pretty good. It's especially served warm. It just kind of depends on who's making it, but it is very good. She is a cabbage soup. Filled with different vegetables and kind of like chicken-like broth. And so both soups are kind of meant to keep you warm on a cold day, which you will definitely find in Russia. Some main dishes, and you've probably seen these before. Beef stroganoff is a dish that is made of egg noodles, beef, sour cream, and mushrooms. We are going to make this in lab, and so if you've never tried it before, you will get to try it in lab. Chicken Kievs are another popular Russian food. It's a chicken breast stuffed with butter and herbs. Today in America, you find them in the frozen food aisle. And so chicken Kievs, or also called cordon bleu, are really tasty. They're good. They're definitely a good main dish. If you're interested in seeing a beef stroganoff demo, you can use the link that you find here to watch that demo. I will also post this on my big campus. Some side dishes as part of Russian cuisine, they tend to change with the seasons. In winter, you're going to see root vegetables like potatoes. You're also going to see mushrooms and sauerkraut. In the summer, asparagus, peas, and cabbage are more common. Those are summer vegetables. Year-round, they use cereal to make breads. They eat cereal as, kasha alone. They add it to soups. They also make dumplings or noodles as part of a lot of their dishes. Dairy products are also a large part of their cuisine. They use sour cream in a lot of different things, and also to make cream sauces, and they use whipping cream in several different dishes as well. Some Russian desserts include pashka, which is a cheesecake that's shaped into a pyramid. This is a very popular Easter dish. Kluch is a bread made in a coffee can filled with fruit and nuts and kind of topped with some colorful different icings. This is very popular around Easter time, which we are getting close to. This is a Russian Easter bread. It's a bread, it looks almost like challah to me, which is the Jewish bread that I demonstrated earlier this semester. It is a bread filled with raisins and topped with hard-boiled eggs. Again, their food really reflects their religion. A lot of them are Protestant or Catholic under the Christian domain, and so they celebrate Easter with foods of all different kinds. As far as Russian meals go, the average Russian family eats about 3 meals a day. Breakfast is simple, kasha, which is a grain with milk, kind of makes an oatmeal, bread, jam, hot tea, sometimes eggs. For lunch, they typically eat soup, breads. Sometimes they'll eat their bread with sausage or cheese, and tea. And depending on where they live, they also might include a meat course or vegetables with the soup. For dinner, dinner is the largest meal of the day there. They have 4 courses, zuzka, which are appetizers if you remember. They have a soup dish, a main dish, which can be a meat, poultry, or fish with potatoes, vegetables, and bread, and a simple dessert as well, depending on the time of the year. So this, in some ways, is very similar to American meals. We have 3 meals a day, and this is really the first country that we've taken a look at that eats in a similar pattern to America. I hope you've enjoyed learning about Russia. Thank you for listening. This is Ms.Beard from Multicultural Foods.